Hi, this is Jean Henningsen with Monarch Leadership Group, and this is Leading Through Crisis, Making a Difference. And here with us today is Dawn Westgate, the Executive Director of the Kimberly Center. Welcome, Dawn.
Hi, Jean. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this interview.
Absolutely. I am really looking forward to hearing how you all have been able to continue to operate Kimberly Center during this time of isolation, because your center is usually buzzing with kids and parents. And so what has happened since we have been locked away?
Sure, so much has happened. It's interesting to take a minute and think back to everything that's happened over the course of these last couple of months in preparation of what we suspected was coming down, and then as we've adapted through it. So at Kimberly Center, just for those of you that aren't as familiar with our mission, we serve children in the aftermath of child abuse or child neglect. And then sometimes some other traumas that can happen in childhood, we serve them in the aftermath of those allegations. And so, of course, those things don't stop happening during a pandemic
Sure.
situation. So we had to really kind of quickly figure out how we were going to continue to meet the needs of our kids that we already had enrolled in services here. And then also how we were going to engage new children that needed to come in for investigative services or for therapeutic services. So my team just have impressed me beyond measure with how they have adapted. What I'd want to highlight probably is our therapy program. So our therapy program at Kimberly's is our longest standing program. Kind of got started with a task force in 1996. We were incorporated in 1999. And through that whole time, we have been providing therapy to children that's really trauma centered. So we have 4 therapists that are full-time on staff with us. They're master degrees, and they're all trained in a whole bunch of different modalities that are best utilized to meet the needs of kids that have had a trauma. And so they provide that therapy and always have face-to-face, sitting in their office with a child and engaging with them and doing hands-on activities and, reading facial emotions and things like that as they work through some of the difficult things our kids have to work through. So I had to kind of look at them and say, okay, what are we going to do? Because we can't have, a lobby full of children and caregivers anymore. We can't have you sitting face-to-face with kids right now. And they very quickly rolled out a telemental health platform. We reached out to all of our families and were able to transition them from face-to-face therapy sessions to these telemental health therapy sessions. And it's been amazing to see how willing our families were to kind of go down that road with us and to jump into that new world of providing for Kimberly Center mental health through this type of virtual platform. I reached
Wow,
out to one
that's
of
great.
my therapists and they, was kind of, how's it going? What's this like? And she was probably 2 weeks into working fully from home, doing these telemental health sessions. And she said, I'm exhausted. I had 10 different children scheduled for therapy sessions today, and every single one of them showed up for their mental health session.
Wow.
It's amazing. Our team is still there and taking care of these kids because their trauma, doesn't just go away because we're in a pandemic situation. We still have to help
Exactly.
them manage that. And so, it's been incredible to watch how they could adapt and continue to work with our kids.
Wow. So even though they're not face to face and they're not doing these hands on activities, they have found that doing this virtually has still been effective.
Yes, absolutely. They've still found it effective. It's definitely not ideal, for a lot of kids. So a 4-year-old trying to engage and do, an hour-long therapy session through a virtual kind of platform like this isn't very effective, and it's hard to keep their attention. So we look forward to getting back to those in-office situations where we are face-to-face with our kids. But we do think that this is something that we can continue to provide in the future as kind of a hybrid. So when we have a child that it makes sense to see them virtually, we can continue to do that as another way that we can meet their needs. So I, in particular, think of our foster care kids. So we have kiddos that come to us in the foster care system for their trauma therapy, and they might have a change in placement. They might move to another county, or they might move to another home where the new caregiver cannot transport them to therapy. So that's a child that we could ideally, continue to provide the service for, let them maintain their bond that they have with their therapist at Kimberly Center and meet their needs through this new kind of world for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Well, congratulations for being able to be so responsive and pivoting so quickly with the services that you provide. I mean, that is just huge. I can't imagine being a child, needing the therapy and then suddenly discovering that I'm stuck at home and I can't get there for my therapy session. So that's amazing, and I'm really glad to hear that they're all showing up for their sessions. That is fantastic. So you're leading your team and keeping everything running remotely while having children at home yourself. So tell us what that's been like.
That has been interesting. So on April 3rd, we did do the transition where all of our staff began fully teleworking. We'd been kind of a hybrid for the couple weeks before April 3rd. And we started teleworking, and I do have 4 children that are all school age. So I have a kindergartner, a 3rd grader, a 6th grader, and a 7th grader.
Wow.
And so we're homeschooling and teleworking, and it's been it's challenging to sit. We tend to sit at the dining room table, and I'll sit with my Kimberly's computer and they'll sit with their individual devices. And, it might take me 30 minutes to respond to one email, but that's
Sure.
okay.
Just a few interruptions.
But it's been a learning experience, I think, for all of us. And I think it's helped me to grow as, in my role at Kimberly Center, and to help me to be more adaptive and more responsive and more creative in how I approach the work here. And I think it's been interesting for my kids to have the experience of being home and seeing, what their siblings are doing and the type of work that their siblings are doing, because that's not something they've normally been exposed to. So it's been kind of fun to watch my 7th grader try to explain 3rd grade math to my 3rd grader so that I don't have to, because sometimes that can be challenging. So it's been fun to see their relationships kind of change as we've gone through this too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you kind of have some built-in teachers there that can help you with the younger ones.
Absolutely. I have definitely been leaning on that. I am not very strong in math. It is definitely my Achilles heel. But my 7th grader is very good at math. So he's definitely the family tutor to get that.
That's great. So in terms of leading remotely, so you mentioned responsive, adaptive, creative. Those are all really great words. What about how your staff has been handling this? Because they're normally all together under the same roof. They all work very much together collaboratively, plus the other organizations that you have, your local law enforcement, your DCF, people that have offices there at Kimberly Center. How has that continued to operate, and what are you noticing in your staff through this change?
Sure. So the staff have, to use the word, my words of choice through this whole scenario have been fluid and adaptive. I think they're very tired of hearing me use those 2 words, but they're so appropriate for all of this. They have worked hard to overcome the challenges that have come up. So all of the agencies that we partner with, like you mentioned, law enforcement, Department of Children and Families, they've both individually implemented their own plans for how they're dealing with how they're going to continue to meet the needs of the population that they serve. So we've had to have strong communication. So we've had to really make sure that we are letting our partners know how we are approaching the work and learn how they're approaching the work, and then just make sure that they understand that especially in the investigation side of what we do, when we recognize that a child might be in danger and we need to figure out what the danger is and what needs to be done to make them safer, we had to decide to take pretty much everything completely case by case. So call us on every case that you get, let us staff it, and let us decide together how we're going to move forward. And so that creates some challenges when you're teleworking from home. And so you've got a computer that's connected through a VPN, and you're using your cell phone through a UC line, with our phone provider. There are just some challenges. So it's required a lot of patience on their part, a lot of strong communication in talking with each other and with our community partners about how we're going to continue to see kids. One of the things that we knew when these orders started coming out, especially once schools closed, we knew that our kids, that we serve at Kimberly's, were going to be kind of in a precarious situation, in that their home lives were about to become their entire world. So that's all they had, was that home, that network that exists just within the walls of their home. They didn't have school outlets, after school outlets anymore. And our stress levels in our families has just increased exponentially. We have families dealing with all types of stressors that are new to them: significant financial stressors, isolation stressors, homeschooling stressors, teleworking. All of these things are really stressful on parents. And when parents are stressed, sometimes their natural ability to cope with that stress can be off balance. And unfortunately, sometimes kids can get hurt as a result of that, or they can be left vulnerable to abuse and neglect. And then what we realized was that is being coupled with isolation and no mandated reporters that our kids are having access to tell if something has happened. So we recognized we really needed to continue to serve children and continue to investigate allegations, but we also needed to increase our community outreach to share with the community some basic steps that we can all take as a community to create some additional layers of safety that maybe weren't they're definitely necessary before, but maybe less necessary because we knew kids were still in school and seeing their teachers and their trusted adults at school. So we really tried to increase how we were communicating with the community about what they could do to help create safer environments. So we really focused those efforts in social media, in just doing some interviews and some sharing about what's happening out there, as well as just getting materials out. So we've partnered with Boys and Girls Club and with Interfaith to share some resources about how to create safer environments in homes, just trying to reduce stress in families and create that awareness that kids really need to be able to be safer.
Yes, yes. And I'm so glad that you're doing this. And perhaps this will be one of those positive outcomes from all the less fortunate things that are happening right now, this increased awareness, because you did have a lot of reports coming through the schools. And so because of that, maybe your average person didn't realize, oh, wow, I need to pay attention. There's something weird going on next door, right? Or I'm noticing things that are unusual. And instead of just turning away, now if they're seeing your messages and they're more aware now, oh, wow, maybe I should be paying attention to that. And not only pay attention to it, but then what do I do? So, as I'm listening to you, Dawn, it occurs to me that perhaps this is a positive outcome, not only being able to counsel virtually as an option, but also this increased awareness. Now, these social media posts, where would people find these? Do these live on the Kimberly Center Facebook page? I'm assuming Interfaith is posting them. Boys and Girls Club might be posting them as well.
Sure. So our Kimberly Center has Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So we've been trying to share in all of those different platforms. Kids Central has also been posting. We've been partnering together and trying to make sure that we are sharing really good information, and we've seen a lot of cross-posting of the information that we've been putting out there. So a lot of people have been picking it up and sharing it because I think people realize this is a vulnerable time for kids and they want to help create that awareness too. So you can search us in any of those platforms and you'll definitely find our page. As a leader, it helped me realize too that I have a staff member that's on board here that is so well suited to take on our social media. So that's not a conversation I've had with her yet, but I think I have talent on my staff to really take that and run with it, to make sure that we're sharing about the good work that we do at Kimberly Center, but also just working to educate people about what our kids really experience and how we can all keep them safer.
Yes, yes. So there's no doubt that the Kimberly Center continues to make a difference in our community throughout this crisis. How can the community help the Kimberly Center?
So I think there's a lot of different ways that the community can help Kimberly Center. My biggest ask of people right now is awareness. So it is about sharing information through all of your networks, whatever that looks like, if that's through personal conversations or if that's through social media platforms. So just creating awareness. One of the things that I say regularly, especially when we talk about childhood sexual abuse, is that sexual abuse is something that happens in darkness. It happens behind closed doors. It happens because it is such a difficult topic for people to talk about. But the more that we talk about it and the more that we make it something that it's okay to talk about, ultimately the safer our kids are going to be because they feel like they can have a voice and it's something they can talk about. So I'm a big fan of just having those uncomfortable conversations and creating that awareness. So I encourage people to talk about it, talk about Kimberly Center, talk about child abuse. And then I also just encourage them to check on parents and caregivers that are in their networks. This is a stressful time for any parent. So the more you can check in with people and help reduce their own internal stress, ultimately the healthier environment it's going to be for the kids that are in those homes. And in those different environments. So I've just been advocating to check in with your neighbors, check in with your friends. Even if you think they've got it, they don't need any help, just check in and let them know that you're there and share maybe some funny stories and about the challenges that you yourself have had. Just so that people can feel like they're not alone, even though we all might tend to feel a little bit alone with everything that's happening. And then, we've had to cancel some events at Kimberly Center because of the social distancing. We don't really know what the landscape looks like going forward. We don't know when some of these events will be rescheduled, if they'll be rescheduled at all. So we're looking at what type of impact this is going to have on us financially to be able to continue to serve kids, and recognizing that our donors are in that same boat where they don't know what their financial outlook looks like and how they're going to be able to continue to support Kimberly Center and the other local nonprofits. So I would also just encourage the community to learn about the nonprofit community here. There are fantastic organizations doing incredible and important work. And if we all stepped up and gave a little bit to those different organizations that you're personally passionate about, it will go a long way in sustaining the work that's going to be very needed. We know that as soon as our kids get back in front of teachers and summer camp staff and different mandated reporters, and they start to disclose some of the things that might have happened to them during the COVID social isolation, we're probably going to see an increase. So we also need to be prepared, in a time when we might not be able to do as much fundraising, to be able to meet a growing need of providing investigative and treatment services for this, this crisis that we're all going through.
Yes, yes. And how are you preparing for that possible increase? Do you have anything kind of ready to plug and play if that happens?
Right. So our staff, we're going to start phasing back into the office on a staggered schedule next week, just because we know some of the restrictions are lifting on May 4th. So we're going to start staggering back into the office. All of the staff, because we have had a reduced workload, because people are not reporting as frequently right now, but the cases we're getting are very significant cases. But the numbers are down a little bit for us. So our staff have taken the time to do a lot of training. And we've taken the time to do some self-care because we recognize that it's probably going to get challenging when we get back. So I want to make sure that my team is coming back really healthy, as healthy as we can be, so that we're prepared to go through what this is going to look like and help these kids recover as well.
Fantastic. Wonderful. I'm glad that you all are phasing back in to the office. So tell me, what happens if someone is socializing with a neighbor and they notice something that is unusual? Perhaps the parent or the child is just behaving unusually. Maybe they have some physical bruises or cuts or something that the neighbor or friend knows is not normal. What do they do?
Yeah. So what we encourage is, if you have a good faith belief that a child is in harm's way, all it takes is a good faith belief to justify making a report. to the child abuse hotline. You do that by calling 1-800-96-ABUSE. Calls to the hotline are completely confidential. DCF keeps that in the strictest of confidences who reports allegations. So we always encourage people to report. We would also advocate, depending on the relationship that you have with the individual that you're concerned for and the safety involved, having just one-on-one conversations, if that's at all possible, checking in with them. I see that you have a bruise here, you have a cut here. What happened? Tell me about what happened. And just encourage that relationship that you might have with them so that they know you're a safe person and that you're seeing something that you're concerned about. I was talking with Jessica Gilbert with Kid Central, and she was looking at the numbers that are coming out from the Department of Children and Families, and we quickly noticed that in the 1 to 2 month time frame that she was looking at, most of our maltreatment types, the number of reports being generated were down, with the exception of domestic violence. So domestic violence related to children in homes being exposed to it, that one was actually going up. So we know, we're very concerned that we're not getting reports about children. We know that there's also domestic violence happening in homes and that our kids are being exposed to it. And it is such an emotional trauma for a child to be exposed to domestic violence in their homes. They need help and they need support. So we advocate for see something, say something. So if you see something that gives you that good faith belief that you're concerned for a child, make the report. And we also ask that people look at it from the perspective of you're not making an allegation that somebody has done something. You're simply asking for a professional investigation to happen to make sure that a child is safe. And if you tend to look at it that way, you're just asking for an investigation. You're not making an allegation. It makes it a little bit easier to understand the importance of making that call. You could truly save the life of a child or a victim of domestic violence by just making the phone call.
Yes, absolutely. It sounds like it. So let me make sure I'm clear. So you're not getting as many reports because the children don't necessarily have an adult that they're talking to about it. But your understanding is that it's still happening and it's increasing. So as far as how many children are coming forward, have you noticed overall through all agencies, is that number going up? Or is it staying steady and you're expecting it to go up? Like, where are we right now? I just kind of want to get a sense for that because we know it's probably going to increase once these kids go back to school.
Right. So from my perspective, what I have seen is that if you compare last year's numbers to this year's numbers for the same time frame, we're down in reports. But we were just number of reports, we are down. We expected that though, because of that isolation that's happening and our kids are not being exposed to people that are willing to make reports of suspected abuse and neglect. I think the statistic is that only 12% in general, only 12% of reports usually come from within the household. So we know that our kids are not with people right now that are going to make reports of allegations of abuse and neglect. So we are fully, and that is coupled with national research that shows that in times of great crises in communities, you see a spike in child abuse cases. So in the aftermath of massive hurricanes, for instance, you see spikes in child abuse cases. The numbers go up because our families are stressed, and when families are stressed, unfortunately, sometimes kids bear the brunt of that. So we know that abuse is happening. We know that our kids don't have anybody to tell it to. So we also can reasonably then assert that once they are exposed to adults that will make the report, our numbers are going to increase. And they'll increase greater than where they would normally be because the numbers are in fact going to be up because there is more abuse right now. I don't know if that makes sense. That was a lot of different scenarios there, but that's what the research kind of says.
Okay. That does. That makes complete sense. I had heard some statistics that overall in Marion County, we had an increase in child abuse, but I don't know where those numbers came from. But as I'm listening to you, Dawn, I'm thinking, not only are you going to need more resources in terms of counseling availability, right? People to take these children in and to do the initial evaluations and interviews and all of that. But it sounds like you're also going to need an increase in foster homes because some of these kids may not be able to go back to their home where they came from.
So yes, so foster care is something that if you have it on your heart to be a foster parent, there is a dire need in our community for more foster homes. And I agree, it is entirely possible that we will see more kiddos needing to go into foster care. We have a program here at Kimberly Center. It's called Trauma Intervention and Advocacy. It's actually a grant that we have through the hospital district where we take care of children during the period of time when they first are removed from their families and they're waiting for their foster care bed. That can take anywhere from 4 hours to 8 hours to 12 hours while they're waiting for their bed to be identified. And we meet their physical and emotional needs during that trauma of being taken from an abusive or neglectful home that's their home at the end of the day that they want to stay in usually. So we have noticed that during this period of time, we have been getting more cases in that program. So what that then also speaks to me is that while our overall number of reports has gone down a little bit during this period of time, the cases that we are getting are very serious. The cases that we are getting desperately need intervention. And that's why it's so important if you see something to say something, because you really could make a life-saving decision for a child.
Yes, most definitely. And so see something, say something, get out on social media, look at the posts, look at the interviews, the hashtag breathe, don't break. They could go check out that hashtag as well and see some of the interviews that have been done there. Financially, if you're able to give to the Kimberly Center so that you all can continue to do the good work that you're doing. And, I think we need to check in with you again, maybe in a couple of months and see how you're doing, because you, as well as some other organizations that are supporting individuals in a way that could get worse over time. Right. And it may take a while for all of us to recover from this. We need to have less stress on these parents. And, that means getting the economy back. That means getting people back to work. And it means so many things. So I just want to thank you so much and all of your staff for all that you've done during this time. I'm sure there's been some frustration maybe with your staff because they know what's happening in these homes, and yet they can't do anything if the children aren't coming forward or the parents or caregivers aren't coming forward. So I just want to make sure that you understand how grateful I know I am, and so many people in the community, for all the wonderful work that you do. And I really appreciate your time because I know you're busy, especially with 4 kids at home.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to share about our work at Kimberly's. I would love to talk with you again and kind of give you a status on where we're at and what we've learned from this. I did not think that I would need pandemic or quarantine in my emergency operations manual, but it's for sure there now. And we'll have to see what else we might need to add to that manual going forward.
Yes, you and a lot of other organizations. So I think there's a lot to be learned, and I'm focusing on all the positive things that are going to happen as a result of this. So thank you so much, Dawn, for your time. I really appreciate all that you do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.